The locksmith had already removed the deadbolt when I pulled into my driveway, and my mother-in-law stood beside him with a white envelope and 3 brass keys. One tag said Grant, one said Lorraine, the third said Spare. My name was nowhere on them. I asked my husband why his mother was changing the locks on a house I had owned before I ever met him. Grant folded his arms and said, "It's my home too. My mother doesn't need your permission to live with her son." He sounded certain. He did not know I had found the canceled lease, the moving receipt, and the messages they had exchanged while I was away. My name is Tessa Reed. I am 34 years old, and until that afternoon, I thought the worst thing my husband had done was move his mother into my house during a work trip. I was wrong. Moving her in was only the first part. The real plan was to make the change feel permanent before I could stop it. Before I tell you how 3 little keys ended my marriage, think about this. What would you do if your own name was missing from the keys to your front door? The house was a narrow brick Cape Cod in Richmond, Virginia, with a sloped roof, a deep front porch, and floors that complained in every room. I bought it when I was 27. At the time, the kitchen had yellow cabinets, the upstairs bathroom leaked, and a family of squirrels had claimed the attic as private property. I loved it anyway. I had spent 5 years managing hotel renovations, so broken plaster did not scare me. I knew how to read bids, schedule trades, and tell the difference between a real emergency and a contractor trying to sell me panic. I used my savings for the down payment, then repaired the house one project at a time. My father had died when I was in college, and my mother lived in Arizona with her second husband. We were friendly but not close, and I did not have a big family nearby. The house became the steady thing in my life. It held the couch I bought after my first promotion and the kitchen table, where I prepared every major project plan. I met Grant Bell at a charity build organized by my company. He sold commercial kitchen equipment and had volunteered because one of his clients sponsored the event. He was funny without performing for the room, and when a cabinet door refused to hang straight, he stayed after everyone left and helped me fix it. Grant grew up 20 minutes away. His father died when Grant was 23, and his mother, Lorraine, never remarried. He called her every Sunday. He drove over when her smoke detector chirped or her phone needed an update. At first, I liked that about him. A man who showed up for his mother seemed like a man who understood loyalty. Lorraine liked me in the careful way some people like a new restaurant, studying everything before deciding whether it met her standards. On our first dinner together, she asked how much I had paid for my house. On our second, she asked whether Grant contributed to the mortgage. On our third, she said the upstairs rooms were sweet, but not practical for a family. I laughed because I thought she was making conversation, while Grant changed the subject. That became his favorite way to handle her. Lorraine would push a little too far, and Grant would toss a softer topic into the room. Nothing was resolved because the sharp thing simply disappeared under something polite. We married when I was 31. The ceremony was small, and Lorraine cried harder than anyone as she told me she had prayed for a woman who would give Grant a stable home. The wording bothered me, though I could not explain why. I was marrying her son. I was not adopting him. Grant moved into the house after the wedding, and we agreed that the deed would stay in my name because I had bought the property years earlier. He paid half the utilities and groceries, and we split repairs that benefited both of us. He used the second upstairs bedroom as an office, while I kept the small room off the dining room for mine. That room mattered more than its size suggested, because I managed openings and emergency repairs for 6 hotels across the region. Most nights were quiet, but when a pipe burst or an elevator failed, I needed plans, vendor numbers, and a door I could close. My office held project binders, a wide monitor, and the oak desk my father had used when I was a child. Lorraine noticed the room on her first visit after the wedding. She ran one hand along the desk and said, "This would make a lovely sitting room." I told her it made an excellent office. She smiled as if I had missed a joke. The first real problem came the following spring, when Grant gave Lorraine our spare key so she could water the plants while we spent a weekend in Norfolk. We came home early and found her in the pantry, where every shelf had been emptied. Cans covered the counters, my spices were sorted by color, and 3 bags of food sat beside the trash. "I was helping," she said. "No one can find anything in here." I asked why she was still in the house when we had returned hours earlier. She said she had lost track of time. Then I noticed the guest room bed had been remade with sheets from her apartment. A framed picture of Grant as a child stood on the nightstand. Grant saw my face and asked his mother to leave, then I told him the spare key had to come back. He said I was overreacting. I reminded him that she had entered rooms unrelated to the plants and had thrown away food without asking. We argued for an hour. It was our first serious fight. Grant finally called Lorraine, got the key back, and agreed to a simple rule. No parent, friend, or relative would stay in our home without both of us saying yes. I remember asking him to repeat it because I needed to hear that he understood. 2 yesies, he said. 1 no means no. I believed him. That belief lasted almost 2 years. Lorraine rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex near a grocery store and her church, but she complained about the rent, the stairs, the parking, and the young couple above her. Every complaint ended with the same sigh. "It is hard being alone." Grant responded by visiting more often. I never objected. I invited her for holidays, helped replace a bathroom vanity when her landlord approved it, and even drove her to a medical appointment after Grant got stuck with a client. I was not trying to keep a lonely woman away from her son. I was trying to keep her from taking over our home. In early October, my company assigned me to a 10-day project in Charlotte. A hotel renovation had fallen behind, and the owner wanted someone on site before the final inspection. The trip was inconvenient, but important because a successful opening would put me in line for a regional director role. The night before I left, Lorraine joined us for dinner and talked about a new rent increase because her lease renewal was due soon. Grant kept his eyes on his plate. I knew that look because it meant a conversation had happened without me. Lorraine dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "There are 2 empty rooms upstairs here. Those rooms are not empty," I said. "One is Grant's office. One is the guest room. I only meant that this house has space." Grant reached for the bread. "Mom, we talked about this." Lorraine leaned back. "I am not asking for anything. I am observing." After she left, I asked Grant what they had discussed. He said she was nervous about the rent and had asked whether she could stay with us if she ever had an emergency. He claimed he told her any stay would require both of us to agree. I asked if she was planning to end her lease. He said no. I asked if he wanted her to move in. He said no again, faster this time. Then he took my hands and smiled. 2 yesies, remember? I remember. The next morning, he carried my suitcase to the car, kissed me in the driveway, and promised the house would be exactly as I left it. I joked that he could let the dishes pile up as long as he kept Lorraine away from the pantry. He did not laugh. The Charlotte project consumed every hour I gave it. A delivery arrived late, a fire door failed inspection, and the new kitchen hood made a sound like a freight train. I called Grant each night from the hotel, and he always answered, but the calls felt oddly staged. He kept the camera pointed at his face until I heard a cabinet close behind him. I asked if someone was there. He said the television was on, but another night, a woman laughed in the distance. Grant told me Lorraine had stopped by with soup. I asked how often she had been visiting. He said twice. Then he started talking about the weather. I finished the project on schedule, and the owner signed the final list on Friday morning before my director congratulated me at lunch. I should have driven home feeling proud. Instead, I spent the 4-hour trip replaying the woman's laugh and Grant's careful camera angles. My first clue was the doormat. Mine was a plain brown mat with a black border, while the one on the porch had blue flowers and the word welcome curling across it. A ceramic rabbit sat beside the door, though Easter was months away. My key still worked. That detail later felt like a courtesy they had not yet remembered to remove. The house smelled like rose powder and slow-cooked onions while music played in the kitchen. Lorraine stood at the stove in slippers, stirring a pot with my wooden spoon. Grant was opening a bottle of wine. Neither looked surprised to see me, and that was the moment I knew this was not a misunderstanding. Lorraine smiled. "You are early. I live here." "Of course you do. I meant earlier than Grant expected." 2 suitcases stood against the hallway wall, and a garment bag hung from the coat rack. Lorraine's purse occupied the little tray where I kept my work keys, which had been moved to a bowl near the back door. I looked at Grant. "Why are her suitcases here?" He set down the corkscrew. "There was a problem at her apartment." "What problem?" "A pipe broke," Lorraine said. "The bedroom ceiling is damp, and the smell is unbearable." I asked when it happened. Grant said Tuesday. Lorraine said Wednesday. They looked at each other, and Grant corrected himself. "Late Tuesday night, the manager saw it Wednesday." I did not take off my coat. "How long is she staying?" "A few days," Grant said. Lorraine lowered the heat under the pot. "Until the apartment is safe." The words were reasonable. The room was not, because my cookbooks had been moved from the open shelf. Floral canisters stood in their place. A framed photo of Lorraine and Grant rested beside the coffee maker. My dark green curtains were gone. I walked to the guest room. The door was open. Lorraine's clothes filled the closet under a quilt from her apartment, while the nightstand held her clock, her hand cream, and a silver jewelry box. She had not packed for a few days. She had recreated a bedroom. I went to my office next, where half my project binders were stacked on the floor. The reading chair from the guest room had been wedged beside my desk, while a plastic tote labeled winter clothes blocked the filing cabinet. "Why is her property in my office?" Lorraine appeared behind me. "The guest closet is small. We had to be practical." "Who is we?" "Grant and I." Grant came down the hall with his palms raised. "Tess, you just got home. Let's eat before this becomes a thing." It became a thing while I was 4 states away. Lorraine's mouth tightened. I did not choose to have water come through my ceiling. I wanted to believe her. More accurately, I wanted to believe my husband had not lied to me for 10 days, and that desire made me ignore what my own eyes were showing me. I set down my suitcase and asked for the name of the apartment manager. Lorraine said she did not need me interfering, while Grant said he had already handled it. Neither offered a repair date. I told Lorraine she could stay through Sunday evening, since it was Friday. That gave her 2 nights and enough time to arrange a hotel or return home if the repair finished, and I made the deadline clear. Grant's face changed. "Sunday is too soon." "Then tell me the actual repair schedule." He rubbed the back of his neck. "They haven't given one." "Then she can stay in a hotel while they work it out." Lorraine laughed once. "You would put your husband's mother in a hotel? I would help pay for a hotel." I will not agree to an open-ended stay that was hidden from me. Grant said no one had hidden anything. I reminded him of every call from Charlotte. His mother had been sleeping under my roof while he looked into the camera and told me she was only visiting. "I was trying not to distract you," he said. That sentence would become his defense for everything. After dinner, I carried the plastic tote out of my office. Lorraine followed me and asked where I was taking it. I said the garage. She told me wool coats could not be stored there. I said they could for 2 nights. Grant stepped between us. "Can everybody stop marking territory?" I looked at him. "That is exactly what your mother has been doing." He slept in his office that night. I locked my bedroom door, something I had never done in my own marriage, then lay awake for an hour listening to Lorraine move through the kitchen. Drawers opened. Cabinet doors closed. Water ran. At midnight, I went downstairs and found her labeling shelves with small white stickers. "Grant likes things organized," she said. So do I. That is why everything already had a place. She peeled one label from its backing. A home should work for the whole family. This home worked before you moved into it. Her eyes settled on me. Grant said you might need time to adjust. The sentence chilled me more than an open threat would have because they had discussed my reaction. It meant my resistance was not a surprise. It was a stage they expected to wait out. I asked what else Grant had said. Lorraine smiled and pressed a label under the T. You should ask your husband. I did. Grant was awake on the office couch, staring at his phone, so I repeated his mother's words and asked what plan required me to adjust. There is no plan, he said. She is scared. I was trying to calm her down. Did you tell her she could live here? No. Did you tell her I would get used to her being here? He paused. The pause answered before he did. I may have said you would understand once the emergency was in front of you. I reminded him of our agreement. 2 yesies, 1 no. He said this was different because his mother had nowhere safe to sleep. I asked why a hotel was impossible. He said she hated hotels. I asked why she could not stay with a friend. He said that would embarrass her. I asked why her comfort mattered more than my consent. Grant looked exhausted. Because she is my mother, Tessa. And I am your wife. I know that. He said it like those roles belonged in separate rooms. Saturday morning, I found a change of address confirmation on the entry table showing that Lorraine had forwarded her mail to my house. The effective date was the Monday before my trip. I carried the card into the kitchen. A burst pipe on Tuesday did not make you forward your mail the week before. Lorraine buttered a piece of toast. The post office makes mistakes. The card has your signature. Grant walked in, saw what I was holding, and let his shoulders drop. Lorraine did not even look embarrassed. I was considering options. While telling me there was no plan, I did not tell you anything. That was true. She had let her son do the lying. I asked Grant for an explanation. He said his mother's rent had increased more than she could manage, so he had suggested she forward important mail during the decision period. He insisted that did not mean the move was permanent. Then, why was it done before the pipe broke? He had no answer. I moved the Sunday deadline to noon. Grant protested. Lorraine said she would not be rushed from her son's home. I corrected her. This is my house. Grant lives here with me. The words sounded harsh, but facts sometimes sound harsh to people who depend on confusion. Lorraine stood. A wife who loves her husband does not keep score over a deed. A husband who loves his wife does not use her work trip as a moving date. Grant hit the counter with his palm, not hard, but loud enough to stop us both. He said we were turning a temporary problem into a family war. Then he grabbed his jacket and left. I watched his car back out and for one foolish second felt guilty. That was my old weakness. If someone else became uncomfortable, I assumed I had caused the discomfort by speaking, not that they had caused it by crossing a line. Lorraine saw the guilt. She knew exactly how to use it. He lost his father young, she said softly. He has already lost enough. I almost apologized. Then I looked at the change of address card in my hand. Grant returned 3 hours later with coffee for all of us, set my cup beside me, and kissed the top of my head. It was the kind of gesture that had repaired small arguments in the past. This was not a small argument. He said he had spoken to Lorraine's apartment manager, who claimed repairs would begin Monday and might take a week. He proposed that his mother stay until the following Friday. I asked to see an email or work order. Do you need paperwork for everything? He asked. When the story changes every few hours, yes. Lorraine sighed from the doorway. This is humiliating. I told her the humiliation could end at noon the next day. She could show me proof of the damage, or she could pack. Grant called that cruel. I called it a choice. That afternoon, my friend Maya stopped by with groceries. She and I had worked together at my first hotel job, and she was one of the few people who knew how much the house meant to me. She walked in, saw the floral doormat, and whispered, "Did I miss a revolution?" Lorraine appeared before I could answer. She introduced herself as the new lady of the house. Her tone was playful. Her hand rested on the doorframe like a claim. Maya looked at me. Is that official? No, I said. Lorraine laughed. Tessa likes precise language. Maya did not laugh with her. She handed me the groceries and asked whether I needed help with anything, an ordinary question that gave me something I had not felt since coming home. A witness. I asked Maya to stay for coffee. Lorraine objected that she had planned to use the dining table for paperwork. I told her the table was available. She gathered her folders with a wounded expression and carried them upstairs. One folder fell open near my chair. Inside was a brochure for a nearby storage facility and a printed list titled Household Consolidation. I saw my name beside the words Office Relocation. Lorraine snatched it up before I could read more. Personal papers, she said. About my office? You are jumping to conclusions. Maya waited until Lorraine left the room. How long has she been here? 10 days. And how long was she supposed to be here? She was never supposed to be here. Saying it out loud stripped away the softer language. This was not a difficult visit. It was an unauthorized move. After Maya left, I photographed every changed room, including the mail card, the suitcases, the labels, and the storage brochure. I did not do it to build a dramatic case. I did it because my job had taught me that memory becomes negotiable when other people benefit from forgetting. Grant found me taking a picture of the guest closet. He accused me of making his mother feel like a criminal. I said criminals were not the issue. Consent was. Stop using that word, he said. Which word? Consent, it makes this sound ugly. It is ugly. He walked away. That night, I asked the one question I could not let go. Where was her furniture supposed to go when the apartment ceiling was repaired? He looked at the floor. Lorraine had ended her lease, he said. She had been planning to move somewhere cheaper. The pipe damage had only accelerated the timeline. It was another partial truth. I could feel the rest sitting behind it. I asked when her lease ended. He said the end of the month. That was 2 weeks away. I asked why she had moved all her things already. He said the movers offered a better rate on a weekday. Which weekday? He could not remember. At 10 that morning, Grant drove Lorraine to church. I used the quiet to restore my office. I carried her totes to the guest room and moved the chair back, finding a small white envelope from a locksmith company underneath it. Inside was an estimate for a new front deadbolt, a side door lock, and 3 duplicate keys for an appointment on Tuesday afternoon. The customer name was Lorraine Bell. I read the page twice. The estimate included a note, customer requests keyed entry for household adults, 3 labeled key tags, no keypad. I called the company. I did not ask for private details, but I gave my address, identified myself as the property owner, and said I had not authorized any work. The receptionist confirmed only that an appointment existed. She marked the account for owner verification. The appointment was 2 days away. Lorraine had planned to change my locks before her supposed Friday departure. When Grant returned, I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. Lorraine stopped behind him. "What is this?" I asked. Grant glanced at his mother. "A quote. For locks. The front one sticks," Lorraine said. "It has never stuck. It sticks for me. Then you do not need a key." Grant pulled out a chair. "Sit down. We can talk about this." I remained standing. "Why are there 3 keys?" "One for each of us and a spare," he said. "There are 3 adults. If one key is a spare, whose name is missing?" No one answered. Lorraine finally said, "You are usually home through the garage." I could not speak for a moment. She had assigned me a secondary entrance to my own house, and my husband had heard the plan yet found it normal enough to explain. Grant tried to soften it. He said the labels were only placeholders. He said the locksmith could make more keys. He said I was focusing on a clerical detail. I slid the envelope toward him. "Cancel it," he said he would. "Now, Tessa, it is Sunday." The company answered when I called. Lorraine's head snapped toward me. "You called them?" "Yes." You went through my papers and interfered with my appointment? The appointment is at my house. She said the word "my" was the problem. She said marriage meant shared property, shared burdens, and shared family. I told her marriage did not turn deception into permission. Grant picked up his phone and stepped outside. Through the window, I watched him pace. When he returned, he said the appointment was canceled. I asked to see the confirmation. He showed me an email. The appointment had been moved, not canceled. New time, Monday morning. I looked at him until he lowered the phone. Mom changed it, he said. Lorraine crossed her arms. Because the lock is unsafe. I called the company again and canceled the appointment as the owner. Then I asked the receptionist to note that no work should occur without my direct approval and identification. Grant called that an attack on his mother. I told him it was protection of my property. He said, "You are making me choose." I answered, "You made the choice while I was in Charlotte. I am only learning what it was." Lorraine went upstairs and slammed the guest room door. Grant sat at the table with his face in his hands. For a moment, he looked like the man I had married. Tired, ashamed, and trapped between what was right and what was easy. I sat across from him. I said we could still fix part of this. Lorraine needed to leave that day. He needed to tell me the entire truth. Then we needed counseling before we made another major decision together. Grant looked up. His eyes were wet. She has nowhere to go. That is not the entire truth. She cannot afford the new rent. That is a problem. It is not the truth. He asked what I wanted him to say. I told him to start with the date he first promised her my guest room. He flinched. That was when I knew there had been a promise. Grant admitted they had discussed a long-term stay in August. He claimed he never formally agreed. Lorraine had worried she would be priced out of the area, so he had said she could probably stay with us while she figured things out. I asked what probably meant. A week. A month, a year. He did not know. I asked whether he told her about our 2-yes rule. He said, "I thought you would say no before hearing the details." That was my right. I thought if you saw how well it could work, you might feel differently. So you moved her in to make my no harder to say? He looked away. There it was, not confusion, not emergency. Strategy. I told him his mother had to be gone by 6 that evening. He asked for 1 more week. I refused. He asked for 1 more night. I refused again. Then Lorraine came downstairs carrying her purse but no suitcase, saying she would spend the afternoon with a friend until I became reasonable. Grant drove her. At 6, neither returned. At 7, Grant texted that Lorraine was too upset to come back for her things and that he was staying with her at a friend's home for the night. He asked me not to touch anything. I walked through the guest room. Her clock still glowed on the nightstand. Her clothes filled the closet. The white envelope from the locksmith was gone from the kitchen table. They had not left. They had paused. Grant came home Monday morning with Lorraine behind him, carrying 2 paper bags from a bakery as if breakfast could make the scene domestic. Lorraine walked straight to the guest room. I blocked the hallway. "You said you were getting her things." "She needs her medication," Grant said. "She can take it with her." Lorraine pressed a hand to her chest. "I have spent the night on a sofa because my daughter-in-law threw me out during a housing crisis. I asked for the friend's address so I could send the rest of her belongings." Grant said the friend could not host her again. He had called several hotels, but Lorraine refused to stay alone. "No," Lorraine corrected. "My son refused to abandon me in a hotel." The distinction was meant for me. Grant asked for a private conversation. In his upstairs office, he closed the door and said our marriage would not survive if I forced his mother out that morning. I told him our marriage might not survive what he had already done. He took my hands. I pulled them away. "I panicked," he said. "Mom's lease was ending. You were leaving town. I thought I could solve it, then explain." "You did explain. You used a fake pipe." "That part was stupid." "The part where you lied, or the part where the lie was easy to disprove?" He sat on the edge of his desk. "Give me until Friday. I will find her a place. I will move her myself. No more changes to the house. I should have said no. I knew it even then. Yet the man in front of me had shared my bed for 3 years. He had held my hand while I cleared my father's last storage unit and stayed up all night when I thought I might lose my job. Part of me still believed a deadline could restore the person I knew. I agreed to Wednesday evening, not Friday. I wrote the date on a sheet of paper. I added that Lorraine was a temporary guest, no property would be moved, no visitors would be invited, and no contractor would be contacted. Grant signed it. Lorraine refused. "It is degrading," she said. "Then leave now." She signed. That was my mistake. I treated a signed rule as evidence of good faith, though it only proved that they knew exactly which rules they were about to break. I worked from home that day because my office files were still disordered. At noon, a moving truck stopped at the curb. 2 men came to the door with an order to collect a desk, a filing cabinet, and 6 boxes from the first-floor office. The order had Grant's name on it. I told them the pickup was canceled. One man showed me his phone. The destination was a storage unit across town. The scheduled items included my father's oak desk. Grant came downstairs while I was speaking. He said the move had been arranged before our conversation, and he forgot to cancel it. Lorraine stood behind him. "The guest room is too far from the bathroom at night." The bathroom was 6 steps away. "You plan to turn my office into her bedroom," I said. "Only if she stayed longer," Grant answered. "You signed a paper 3 hours ago saying she would not." He called the movers and paid the cancellation fee. They left. Lorraine complained that I had humiliated her in front of working men. I closed my office door and locked it. At 5, the printer in my office woke and began feeding pages because Grant sometimes sent documents to it by mistake through our home network. I expected a sales report. The first page was a notice showing Lorraine had declined her lease renewal in late August, and the second was a moving receipt dated 2 days before I left for Charlotte. The third was a confirmation from the storage company. There was no mention of water damage. I carried the pages upstairs. Grant was on a call. I waited until he finished, then placed them beside his laptop. "You knew before my trip." He looked at the dates. His face went pale. Lorraine came to the door. She saw the pages and said the printer had no right to release private documents. I almost laughed. Even then, her concern was not the lie. It was the failure of the lie to remain private. I asked whether any pipe had broken. Grant said there had been a leak in another building at the complex, while Lorraine had complained about dampness in the hallway. They had borrowed the story because it sounded easier than explaining the rent. "Easier for whom?" "For everyone," he said. "No." "Easier for you?" Lorraine stepped closer. "I did not want to beg, so you chose to trick me." "I chose not to place my future in the hands of a woman who keeps reminding my son that his home belongs to her." That was the first honest sentence she had spoken. I looked at Grant. "Is that what this is about?" He did not answer. I reminded him that I had offered to sell the house after our wedding and buy a new place together. But he had refused because our mortgage was low and his commute was easy. I had also offered to meet with an attorney about a fair ownership agreement if he wanted to invest in the property. He said paperwork would make the marriage feel like a business. Now he said, "You never let me forget whose name is on the deed." "I mention the deed when you give away rights you do not have." Lorraine shook her head. "Listen to yourself. Rights, agreements, ownership. A family should not sound like a contract. A family should not need one to stop lying." Grant asked his mother to leave us alone. She refused. He did not ask again. I took the signed guest rules from the kitchen and placed them beside the printed pages. "You are leaving tonight." Lorraine said no. The word was quiet. It carried more confidence than any shout. I told her she had entered as a guest with a clear deadline, and if she refused to go, I would follow the proper legal process and document every step. I would not argue with her in circles. Grant said involving a lawyer would destroy any chance of repairing the family. The repair was due before the move. He followed me downstairs. Lorraine stayed in his office, making a phone call in a low voice. I could hear my name and the word unstable. Grant stopped me at the kitchen table. I need you to understand something. This house has never felt like mine. The statement hurt because it contained a real feeling, and although it excused nothing, I could finally see the grievance under his choices. I asked why he had never told me. I tried. When? Every time you said my mother needed permission, every time you called it your office or your kitchen. I stared at him. I called my office my office. You call your office your office. That is not the point. Then make the point. He said he paid bills and repaired the fence. He had planted the maple tree out front. He wanted the freedom to help his mother without asking like a tenant. I reminded him that he was not a tenant. He was my husband. That gave him a voice in our home, not the power to erase mine. What would have happened if you asked me? He said. I would have said no to a permanent move. I would have helped find another solution. Exactly, you would have said no. He spoke as if my answer proved the need to prevent me from giving it. I asked whether he understood that. He did not respond. At that moment, the family tablet we used for recipes, music, and the security system chimed on its stand near the coffee maker. Grant had signed into his messages months earlier and never signed out. A preview appeared across the screen. It was from Lorraine. Do not let her make you back down. Once the locks are changed, she cannot pretend this is only her house. Grant reached the tablet before I did. He swiped away the message, but the words were already in the room. I asked to see the conversation. No. Then tell me what Tuesday changes. He said nothing. I picked up the white locksmith envelope from my bag. I had taken it after canceling the appointment. This was not about a sticky lock. Lorraine entered the kitchen. You have no right to read my messages. I read the message you sent to a screen in my kitchen. She turned on Grant. Why was that connected? For the first time, he snapped at her. Because it is my account. Their argument lasted less than a minute. It told me more than either intended. Lorraine believed the lock change would force the issue. Grant knew about the plan. They disagreed only about whether to admit it. I told Grant he could show me the thread or leave with his mother. He accused me of issuing an ultimatum. I said an ultimatum takes something away. I was offering him a final chance to restore the truth. He unlocked the tablet. The conversation began 6 weeks before my trip. Lorraine had written that she could not renew her lease or move farther from Grant, and he had replied that she should not have to. She asked whether I had agreed. He wrote, not yet. A week later, he sent her my Charlotte travel dates. Another message said, we will move the big pieces while she is gone. Let me handle Tess. She gets upset when plans change, but she settles once things are already done. Lorraine replied, she will understand that a marriage is not a dictatorship. Grant wrote, this will finally feel like my house too. I kept reading. They discussed which room Lorraine would use, where my office could go, and what furniture should be stored. Lorraine suggested new curtains and a lighter kitchen color. Grant told her not to change too much before I returned. Then came the lock plan. Lorraine wanted new keys because she feared I would ask for hers back, while Grant said changing the deadbolt immediately would look aggressive. He suggested waiting several days after I had adjusted to her presence. The final message had been sent while I was driving home from Charlotte. Do not worry, Mom. By the time she realizes this is permanent, undoing it will feel cruel. I stopped there. Grant reached for the tablet. I held it away. You planned my guilt, I said. He looked sick. I was trying to avoid a blow-up. You scheduled it for after the move. Lorraine said he had been desperate to keep peace between two difficult women. I turned to her. There are not two difficult women here. There is one homeowner who said no and one guest who moved in anyway. She told me I was cold. She said she had raised Grant alone after his father died. She had worked weekends, skipped vacations, and made sure he never felt poor. Now she needed one room, and I guarded the house like a bank vault. I believed her sacrifice. I also saw the invoice she had attached to it. "You deserve care," I said. "You do not deserve control of my home." Her face hardened. "They are the same thing when family is real." "No. They are the same thing only when care is used as a debt." Grant whispered my name. I could not look at him. I photographed the visible messages, then signed out of his account on the tablet. I told him I would not read anything unrelated to me. I had seen enough. That night, I packed a small bag for Grant and set it outside his office. I did not throw him out. I told him he could stay in the upstairs room until we had legal guidance, but the marriage was on hold. We would not share a bed, money beyond current bills, or decisions. He stared at the bag. "You are ending us over my mother needing help. I am separating from you because you designed a plan to make my voice irrelevant." He said those were lawyer words. They are my words. Lorraine called from the guest room that he could sleep there with her. Grant closed his eyes. For the first time, I think he heard how far the situation had fallen. The next morning, I called a family law attorney before I called my director. I did not ask how to punish anyone. I asked what I could legally do, what I should document, and how to avoid making a bad situation worse. The answers were less dramatic than television. Keep the house secure. Do not touch Lorraine's property. Put every deadline in writing. Do not threaten, shove, or improvise. If she refused to leave, use the formal process. I could do that. Calm procedures were familiar ground. I emailed Lorraine a written notice with a departure date and handed her a printed copy. The date gave her enough time to arrange housing without rewarding the deception with an open-ended stay. I also wrote that no locks, furniture, utilities, or mail records could be changed. She read the page at breakfast. "You hired a lawyer against your own family." "I hired a lawyer because my husband and his mother planned to lock me out." "No one planned to lock you out." I placed the locksmith estimate beside her plate, then explained the key marked spare. She pushed both papers away. Grant spent the morning making real housing calls. This time, he included me on speaker. Lorraine qualified for a modest apartment less than 15 minutes away. It had an elevator, covered parking, and a lower monthly rent than her old place. The manager offered a tour that afternoon. Lorraine refused because the kitchen cabinets were brown. He looked at me, perhaps expecting help. I said nothing. Rescue had become his reflex and my unpaid assignment. I was done performing it. By lunch, Lorraine had rejected 3 places. One was too close to traffic. One faced north. One allowed small dogs, which she said meant the hallway would smell. That afternoon, Maya came over while Lorraine toured a 4th apartment with Grant. I showed her the signed rules, the notices, and the photos. She listened without turning the situation into entertainment. "Are you hoping he chooses you?" she asked. The question embarrassed me. He is my husband. That was not my question. I looked at the white envelope on the table. "I am hoping he chooses the truth," Maya nodded. "Then judge the choice he makes, not the speech he gives afterward." She helped me move my work files into a locked cabinet. She did not tell me to divorce him. She did not tell me to forgive him. She reminded me that waiting for clarity is different from waiting for permission. Grant returned before dinner. Lorraine had refused the 4th apartment because the bedroom window faced the parking lot. He looked defeated. He asked whether we could talk on the porch. Outside, the air smelled like rain. He said he was sorry for lying. He admitted the pipe story had been his idea. He admitted he had sent Lorraine my travel dates and hired the movers. Then he reached the word, but you have to see why I felt cornered. I told him an apology that turns into a defense is only a softer argument. He repeated that the house had never felt like his, though he had refused every chance to build or buy something jointly. He said he would move Lorraine by the deadline. He asked me not to involve the attorney beyond advice. I told him the attorney was already involved because trust was no longer enough. He nodded, but his mouth tightened. I saw the old pattern return. Agree now. Resist later. For 2 days, the house became unnaturally polite. Lorraine packed one box and left it open on the guest room floor. Grant slept upstairs. We spoke only about schedules and bills. No one touched the curtains. No one invited guests. No one mentioned keys. The silence almost fooled me. On Thursday morning, I left for a hotel meeting across town. Before I went, I checked the front lock. It turned smoothly. The white locksmith envelope remained in my locked office. At noon, Grant texted that he was taking Lorraine to lunch. I replied with a thumbs up, then disliked myself for feeling relieved. The meeting ended early. Rain had started and traffic was light. I reached my street shortly after 2. A white service van was parked at the curb. The logo was not the company I had canceled. A man in a gray work shirt knelt beside my front door. The old deadbolt lay on a cloth near his knee. Lorraine stood under the porch roof holding a white envelope. It was new, but it looked almost identical to the first. 3 brass keys glinted inside. I parked across the driveway so the van could not leave without speaking to me. Then I walked to the porch. "Stop," I said. The locksmith froze. Lorraine did not. "You are not authorized to change that lock." The man stood and asked whether I lived there. I said I owned the house and showed him my identification. He looked at the work order on his phone. Lorraine said, "My son hired you." "He lives here. Where is Grant?" I asked. "In the kitchen." I stepped inside. Grant stood by the counter with both hands flat against it. He had known I might return. He simply had not expected me yet. I held up the new envelope. "You promised no more changes." He looked toward the porch. "The front lock has been unreliable. That lie failed the first time. Mom needs secure access. She is under written notice to leave." He lowered his voice. "You cannot treat her like a trespasser. I am treating her like a guest who refused to go." Lorraine entered behind me. The locksmith remained outside, close enough to hear, but wise enough not to join us. Grant folded his arms. His shame hardened into anger. "It's my home, too. My mother doesn't need your permission to live with her son." There it was, the sentence from the porch, the belief beneath every excuse. I set the new envelope on the kitchen table. The tags were already labeled. Grant, Lorraine, spare. "Where is my key?" I asked. Grant said the labels did not matter. Lorraine answered, "You use the garage." The room became very still. I opened my work bag and removed the papers I had prepared. The lease cancellation, the moving receipt, the signed guest rules, the message screenshots, the written notice. I placed them in a neat stack beside the keys. Lorraine laughed. "More paperwork." "Yes." "You think paper makes you family." "No, paper proves what family tried to deny." Grant told the locksmith he could finish. I stepped to the door and told the man I did not consent. He looked from Grant to me, then checked the name on my identification against the property information I showed him. "I am putting the old hardware back," he said. "You two need to resolve this before anyone calls us again." Lorraine demanded a refund. He told her to call the office. Then he reinstalled my deadbolt, tested it twice, and packed his tools. The visible consequence was immediate. The new keys stayed useless in their envelope. When the van pulled away, Lorraine turned on me. "Are you proud of humiliating us in front of a stranger?" "I am relieved a stranger respected a no that my husband ignored." Grant said I had made him look powerless in his own home. "You made yourself powerless when your plan depended on me arriving late." He pointed at the papers. "You document everything. You turn every feeling into evidence. Because both of you keep changing the story." Lorraine picked up the lease cancellation and tore it in half. I did not react. "That is a copy." She tore it again. "That is also photographed." Her hand stopped. Grant told me I was enjoying this. I was not. My chest hurt. My fingers were cold. Part of me still wanted him to cross the room, choose honesty, and become the man I remembered. Instead, he said, after everything my mother did for me, you expect me to put her on the street. I pointed to the apartment list. She rejected 4 available homes. She deserves better than those. So do I, Lorraine said a good wife would make room. I looked at Grant. Do you believe that? He hesitated, then said yes. The answer hurt more than the lies. Lies can be blamed on fear. That answer was a value. I slid the written notice toward Lorraine. You need to leave by the date on this page. You may take every item you brought. I will not touch your property. If you stay past the deadline, my attorney will handle the next step. She turned to Grant. Tell her I am not going anywhere. Grant looked at me. If she goes, I go. He meant it as leverage. He expected fear to finish the work guilt had started. I took a breath. Then go. His face changed. You do not mean that. I do. You would end our marriage over a room? No, I am ending it over a plan. The room was only where you put the plan. Lorraine muttered that I had always wanted him separated from his family. I ignored her. I spoke to my husband. She needed my permission to move into my house. You needed my trust to stay married to me. You spent both while I was away. Grant stared at the table. I continued. A shared home is not one where one spouse is tricked into sharing it. It is not one where the owner becomes the spare key. You wanted your mother to feel permanent by making me feel temporary. He said he had only wanted balance. Balance does not require a lie. Lorraine pushed the key envelope toward me. Keep your precious house. I pushed it back. Those keys open nothing. That sentence finally broke the performance. She began to cry, not quietly. She said she had sacrificed her whole life for Grant, and now I was forcing him to abandon her. She asked whether I knew what it felt like to be old and unwanted. I answered honestly. No. But I know what it feels like to be unwanted in my own home. Grant told her to stop. She kept going. She said he had promised she would never have to live alone again. She said his father would be ashamed of him if he let me win. Grant closed his eyes. Mom. She grabbed his sleeve. You said this would be our home. Our home, not his home, not a temporary room, our home. Grant pulled his arm free. For 1 second, I thought he understood. Then he walked upstairs and brought down the bag I had packed for him. I will stay with her until she is settled, he said. Your choice. He took his house key from his ring and placed it on the table. The sound was small. It was also the first irreversible thing either of us had done. Lorraine rushed upstairs. Drawers opened. Closet doors slammed. She packed only what fit into her suitcases and said she would return with movers for the rest. I wrote a simple note stating that Grant was leaving voluntarily with his belongings and returning his key. He read it, called it cold, then signed it after speaking to someone on the phone. I did not ask who advised him. I gave him a copy. Maya arrived 20 minutes later because I had texted her when I saw the service van. She stood by the dining room while Grant carried bags outside. She did not speak for me. She did not need to. Lorraine paused at the front door. When he realizes what you are, he will come back to me for good. I looked at the new floral doormat beneath her shoes. He already chose where to go. She walked out. Grant waited on the porch. His eyes moved over the living room, the stairs, and the kitchen beyond me. For the first time, he seemed to see the home as something he could lose. I thought you would understand, he said. I understand now. I closed the door. The house did not feel peaceful that night. It felt emptied after a storm. Lorraine's boxes remained upstairs, her labels clung to the pantry, and the white envelope of useless keys sat on the table. Maya stayed until I ate something. Before she left, she asked whether I wanted her to take the envelope. I said no. I needed to see it once more in daylight. Grant texted after midnight. He said he and Lorraine were at an extended stay hotel. He asked whether he could come home alone the next morning. I told him we would speak through the mediator and arrange a time for his remaining property. His reply was, "So that's it," I wrote. The lock was not the beginning. It was the proof. Over the next week, Lorraine collected her belongings with a moving crew. Maya was present, and so was a neutral coordinator my attorney recommended. No one argued. Lorraine took the floral curtains, the ceramic rabbit, and every labeled canister she had brought into my kitchen. She also took the blue doormat. I was glad. After Grant signed a temporary occupancy agreement, I changed the alarm code and had the old deadbolt rekeyed with my attorney's approval. Grant found Lorraine an apartment near her church. It was one of the places she had rejected. The brown cabinets did not change, but her standards did once he stopped offering my house as the alternative. He rented a small place across town. For several weeks, he sent long apologies. Some were sincere. Others still asked me to admit that I had made his mother feel unwelcome. I answered only what concerned bills, property, or the separation. During mediation, Grant admitted that he had expected me to surrender rather than risk the marriage. Hearing him say it without excuses gave me clarity, not comfort. He had mistaken my patience for dependence. Our divorce was quiet. The house remained mine, and we divided the things we had bought together. I did not ask him to repay every grocery bill or repair. I did not need revenge disguised as accounting. I needed the door to close cleanly. Months later, Grant apologized without the word, but he said he was in counseling and finally understood that avoiding conflict with his mother had made him create conflict for everyone else. I believed he understood more than before. I did not take him back. Forgiveness can release anger. It does not have to restore access. On the first Saturday after the divorce became final, I hired a locksmith. It was my appointment this time. He replaced the worn deadbolt and asked how many keys I wanted. "One for me," I said. I ordered a second emergency key and sealed it in a small envelope for Maya. Her name was on the tag because she had earned access by respecting the fact that it was mine to give. Then, I removed Lorraine's name from the mailbox. I peeled the pantry labels away one by one and carried my project binders back into the office. The house looked ordinary again. That was the victory. They had tried to make the owner use the garage. They had called my boundary cruelty and their deception family. In the end, Lorraine got an apartment, Grant got the responsibility for his choice, and I got my home back. The first white envelope still rests in the back of my desk drawer. The 3 tags inside say Grant, Lorraine, and Spare. None of those keys ever opened my door. The new key does. Tell me this: when someone asks for forgiveness, should access return with the apology or only after trust has been rebuilt?